Hello, everybody, and welcome. My name is Amanda Kurtz, Deputy Town Clerk, and I have a few statements for the record before we get started. Tonight's regularly scheduled Herndon Town Council public hearing is a virtual meeting. Individuals are encouraged to provide comments for the record at town.clerk@herndon-va.gov. The meeting this evening is conducted electronically pursuant to Virginia Code Section 2.23708.2 as amended, the Order of the Governor EO 53 as amended, and in accordance with Ordinance 20-0-23, Continuity of Governmental Operations During Pandemic Disaster COVID-19, adopted by the Herndon Town Council as amended. Proper notice of the electronic meeting was provided in accordance with Section 2.23708.2 of the Code of Virginia, along with information for viewing the meeting and submitting comments for the record. The agenda and the meeting materials are available on the town's website. Electronic meetings will begin with a roll call to determine a quorum. All votes, including adjournment, will be by roll call vote. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Amanda, and welcome, everyone. I will call the June 9th Town Council public hearing to order. And before I ask the clerk to please call the roll, I wanted to just say to my colleagues that I'm sure you saw the agenda tonight, and we have many votes that are all roll call, as you know. So I'm going to ask if tonight, if we can try to remember to unmute when the question is called and to vote as quickly as you can, yes or no, with just your last name, and see if we can kind of expedite what's going on. Otherwise, we might be here till midnight. So just a thought. So with that, I will ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Town Manager Bill Ashton.
Town Manager Bill Ashton is present.
Town Attorney Lisa Yates.
Lisa Yates, present.
Vice Mayor Olem.
Olem, present.
Councilmember Baker.
Baker, present.
Councilmember Delagula.
Delagula, present.
Councilmember DeCall.
DeCall, present.
Councilmember Friedrichs.
Councilmember Friedrichs, present.
Councilmember McKenna.
McKenna is present.
Mayor Merkel.
Merkel is present. Thank you so much, everyone. And for the record, we do have a quorum with the entire council, including our town manager and town attorney and various IT staff here to support us. We have 3 sets of minutes up for approval this evening. Is there a motion to approve the May 19th work session minutes?
Mayor, Vice Mayor.
Baker, second.
Okay, discussion on the motion, anyone? Okay, seeing none, I will ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Olem.
Olem, yes.
Councilmember Baker.
Baker, yes.
Councilmember Delagula.
Delagula, yes.
Councilmember DeCall.
DeCall, yes.
Councilmember Friedrichs.
Friedrichs, yes.
Councilmember McKenna.
McKenna, yes.
Mayor Merkel.
Merkel, yes, and that motion carries. Next, is there a motion to approve the June 2nd work session minutes?
So moved. Olem. Second, DeCall.
McKenna.
Okay, we have a motion by Olem, seconded by DeCall. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, I will ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Olem.
Olem,
Councilmember Baker.
Baker, yes.
Councilmember Delagula.
Delagula, yes.
Councilmember Friedrichs. Oh, excuse me. Councilmember DeCall.
DeCall, yes.
Councilmember Friedrichs.
Friedrichs, yes.
Councilmember McKenna.
McKenna was not there.
Okay.
Mayor Merkel.
Excuse me, Merkel, yes. So that motion carries 6 to 0 with 1 abstention. And I think I skipped one, didn't I? Is anybody paying attention? I think I skipped one of our public hearings. Sorry.
That was May 26th, correct?
May 26th.
Okay, that was May 26th. So I'm ahead of myself in my minutes here. Okay, so May 26th.
We still have 6 2.
We still have June 2nd. I'm sorry. There's 38 pages of my prep. So, and I'm already messing up on page 5. So, okay. So that motion carries with 1 extension. And next up, we have the motion to approve the June 2nd work session minutes. Is there a motion?
Approval in second. Olem.
Olem and seconded by, was that Mr. DeCall? Okay. Discussion on the motion for June 2nd?
Madam Mayor, I wasn't at the second. I thought you said June 2nd the last time, but that's okay. I'll abstain from this one as well.
Okay.
So I'm fine with the way it was.
Okay.
No big deal.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, any other discussion? All right, we're off to a roaring start, you guys. I'll ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Olem,
Olem, yes.
Councilmember Baker,
Baker, yes.
Councilmember Delagula,
Delagula, yes.
Councilmember DeCall. Sorry, Councilmember DeCall, I did not hear you.
I didn't hear. Oh, did you call me already?
Yes.
Yes. I did not hear that.
I'm sorry. Councilmember Friedrichs
Friedrichs, yes.
and Councilmember McKenna
Abstain.
abstain. Mayor Merkel.
Okay, Merkel, yes. So once again, that's 6-0 with one extension. And we are definitely in summer mode here, guys. Thank you so much. That brings us to comments from the town manager. I'll recognize our town manager, Bill Ashton, to provide an update on the continuity of operations and matters related to our emergency that we are under at this moment. Mr. Town Manager.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is Bill Ashton, Town Manager. I'll try to get back into spring mode. So
Thank you. Someone needs to.
Just to bring you up to date on some COVID-related issues. Earlier today, the governor held a press conference where he announced that Northern Virginia and Richmond will be entering phase 2 of the recovery, the Forward Virginia plan that he has put forth. Just some highlights of that for us. This will begin on Friday. So midnight Thursday, it will kick in. So functionally Friday. What this will mean for various businesses, restaurants can move to 50% occupancy inside of their establishments, but they have to make sure that the tables are positioned at least 6 feet apart. There is no self-service food, no bar seating. Employees working in any customer-facing areas must wear face coverings. And the limit to any party in the restaurant will be 50 individuals. Farmers markets, on-site shopping is allowed. Employees and vendors in customer-facing areas must wear face coverings. Vendors must supply hand sanitizers and stations, and there must be a thorough cleaning and disinfection of frequently contacted surfaces. For our brick and mortar retail stores, occupancy must be limited to no more than 50% of the lowest occupancy load in the building. Employees must wear face coverings if they are customer facing. And moving on to exercise and fitness, patrons, members, and guests must remain at least 10 feet apart in a gym. Instructors and all participants of group exercise must be at least 10 feet apart, physically distanced. Total number of attendees cannot exceed 30% of the capacity. Hot tub spas, splash pools, things of that nature must remain closed. Outdoor swimming pools will be open for lap swimming and with no more than 3 persons per lane with 10 feet distance per person. This is also applicable to indoor pools as well. Also in this area, employees facing customers must wear face masks. They must clean and disinfect, and any equipment must be thoroughly cleaned between usage, and there must be an abundance of hand sanitizing stations. Personal care and grooming services, which there's a great demand for these days. Occupancy must not exceed 50%, and all service providers must wear face coverings, and clients will be asked to wear face coverings. Beyond that, this is all these restrictions will be enforced by the health department moving forward. So as far as public and in-person gatherings, that limit will still remain at 50 individuals. That includes religious services at 50% of the religious service capacity. Individuals in religious service must be 6 feet apart, and they cannot pass things among attendees. Moving on to things related to the town and COVID. That's what the governor is releasing today that will go into place on Friday. That's some of the things from the town. One of the things we've been working on is increasing the testing capacity in the town limits. I've been working very closely with the Department of Health to facilitate this. This is enormously important because a couple things, if you look at the county data that truly strike you, is the demographic breakdown of infections, especially among our Hispanic community, is dramatic, especially compared to them. And so that is one area that is of concern, especially in a town with such a large and important Hispanic community. Similarly, the 20170 zip code is right now running about sixth as far as per capita cases among the Fairfax County zip codes. So the health department is acutely aware of some of our challenges. I talked to, like I've said in the past, I talked to Dr. Gloria regularly. She is acutely aware. She and I emailed over the weekends 3 or 4 exchanges back and forth about our particular issues here in town. They are going to do a county-sponsored, very targeted testing that will be coming up, but we are looking for other opportunities to enhance that testing. Also want to let you know that 128 town businesses have applied for the Fairfax County RISE program. The Fairfax County RISE program is the business assistance program put together by the county, paid for by CARES Act money. And as of today, as of this morning, 128 of our businesses were being considered for that grant. A little bit of good news for everybody, the farmers market. The farmers market, after working with the county, working with staff, coming up with a really good plan, we will be opening the farmers market on June 18th. So that will be next Thursday. Another thing that we're going to be opening is Parks and Rec will begin operating outdoor 101 personal training classes. That has been worked out and we will get that up and running. HMC will be undergoing a facelift tomorrow to put in all of the necessary sneeze guards in front of staff areas, stanchions, floor stickers, and everything to prepare us to open the lobby area of HMC for customer traffic. Right now, one of the biggest issues is yard waste. I think we should have some good news on yard waste by the end of the week. Just bear with us. This will be the first week where we have gone, I think we've gone since last Monday with anybody calling out symptomatically at the shop. So we will be looking to alter some of our work shift schedules to accommodate putting yard waste back on the to-do list. That being said, special pickups will still remain. We will not be doing special pickups until we get caught up on yard waste, because I know there's a pent-up demand there, and we're going to have to work really hard to get caught up. So I would look for an announcement on yard waste by the end of the week. Farmers Market, June 18th. Look at Parks and Rec, because we are slowly opening certain programs, classes, and ultimately the facility will be opening in a very measured way in the coming weeks. So again, I encourage everybody to visit our website, follow us on social media, pay very close attention to what we put out there, because much like we were using those channels to shut things down, we'll be using them to turn things back on. It feels really good to sit here and talk about turning things back on, because it's something that the staff can't wait to get back to work with all of our services moving forward. That's all I have this evening, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Are there any questions for Mr. Ashton? Anybody? Jen, and then Signe.
Thank you for that update. So I think I have 2 questions. One related to what Governor Northam said. Does that mean we're all caught up? So we're now one state, right? Northern Virginia will be on phase 2 with the rest of the state starting Friday. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
And based on the conversation, I'm not sure, the governor had his press conference, but before his press conference, the mayor and I sat on a teleconference with his chief of staff to give us a preview of the press conference. But one of the 2 conversations, I'm not sure which one, they indicated this will be a 3-week minimum to get through phase 2. So the rest of the state may jump in front of us again, and then we'll play catch up again.
Okay. And then the second question is related to when you talked about enforcement of the policies, right, of the with restaurants, outdoor space, et cetera. You talked about the health department as enforcement.
Yes.
So I wanted some clarification of that. One, just what is our police's role in that? I know I saw some of our police officers out the first weekend we were open.
Right.
And they did see, like, for example, some folks inside a restaurant, which they had to tell them. So I know we ask a lot of our police, and this is a lot to ask them to have to enforce these guidelines. So And then you mentioned the health department. So could you just speak to that?
Well, early on when there was limitations, the executive orders came out with a misdemeanor attached to it. So it was done with the criminal code, which meant police had to enforce. As these executive orders started to develop, I think the governor's office realized what you just said. We ask a lot of the police, is that something we want to ask of our police? And they shifted from enforcing it and doing it through the criminal code to doing it through where the health code is. So this is a health department matter. That is the way the executive, well, I was reading from the executive order. Everything I was reading to you was from the executive order itself. And that is a health department matter in this executive order.
Excellent. I'm glad to hear that. So our police will not be responsible for trying to police these types of the counting numbers and
Yes.
gatherings, et cetera. We're going to
Yes.
just give some people some personal accountability and the health department to be responsible for that.
Now, there are still some restrictions in this executive order that are still covered by that misdemeanor from before, but they aren't
Okay.
what I just covered.
Okay. Very good. I'll check that out some more. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. And Ms. Friedrichs.
This is Signe Friedrichs. I had a question follow up with Councilmember Baker's question. There were some complaints about people not wearing masks in pharmacies and complaints that the store was not enforcing the regulations. And is that something where they could call the police and the police wouldn't have to give them a misdemeanor? Or is that just something?
The mask order was not covered by the criminal code, and the attorney will feel free to jump in here, Lisa, if I'm speaking out of school. But the mask order from the governor, it was when it was first being envisioned. He did talk to some of the chief of police groups and some of the other police groups, and determined that it wasn't appropriate for the police to be the enforcement arm of the mask order. So we are not enforcing it. As a matter of fact, our department put out a Twitter campaign and on their social media that they encourage you to wear them, but they are not responsible for enforcing them.
Okay. I thought that was the case because there were a couple press conferences back. The governor was questioned fairly sternly on that one, and
Yes.
he stood his ground. Okay, the other question I have is for restaurants and workout places and so forth. Who determines the occupancy? Is that a town function or is that the fire department?
The fire marshal's occupancy load that is listed up on all the walls. So if the occupancy is like, say 90, then they can put 30 in there.
Okay. All
Provided right. they are spaced 10 feet apart, provided some of the other restrictions are adhered to.
Good. All right. Thanks.
Thank you. Does anyone else have questions for the town manager? Anyone? And have we lost one of our council members? I don't see Mr. Del Aguila, so I don't know if he's having technical difficulties. Anyway, is there anybody else who has questions for the town manager? Is that you, Sheila? No? Okay. My question, Mr. Town Manager, this is Lisa Merkel. You said limited to parties of 50 in restaurants. Is that party? I think I must have misunderstood that.
The way my reading of it is, if you have a group coming into the restaurant, you can have more than 50 people, and it's consistent with group gatherings elsewhere. So there's the 10-person limit in phase 1 has now been moved to a 50-person limit in phase 2, and in restaurants they were putting the same type of restriction on groups that would come in to celebrate a graduation, perhaps.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sure that will become more clear as we work through it.
I would just,
yes, ma'am.
just add, Madam Mayor, that the term that the executive order uses is gathering. So I think that the town manager's description is correct. It's any group that gathers.
Okay. All right. If there are no more questions, then we will move in. And I just got a message from IT. They're checking in with Mr. Del Aguila to see if he had an emergency or if he is having a technical issue. So I'll let you know when we find out more about that. That does bring us to comments from the town council. Who has comments for us this evening related to the continuity of operations or matters related to the multiple emergencies that have been declared in the town or in the Commonwealth, I suppose? Anybody? Ms. Baker, followed by Ms. Friedrichs. You guys.
Well, so I have a comment / question, and maybe just I'm still trying to learn the rules of what we can talk about during this window. So, there were several emails that went to council over the last week, given all the events that are taking place across the country, and certainly what we also did over the past few days. And I'm just wondering if we can comment on any of that, particularly related to Herndon Police Department and policies. I know a few folks wrote very earnest emails about, hey, what are we doing in Herndon related to those types of things? Is that something we can address or talk about, or maybe at least put on a future meeting, with Chief DeBoard to have her weigh in like she did last time? Maybe Bill, if you could help me with that.
Bill,
Whether we can talk about it, yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, and I guess the town attorney will tell me if this is out of line, but I know that there have been several emails. This has come up on our mayors and chairs conversations as well. A lot of them are the cut and paste emails. We have gotten a couple that were not of that nature, but
right.
And most of them I think have gone to the whole council. And what I have been working to do is to communicate almost every day with the chief, make sure she's seeing them and coordinating a response. Which generally I have tried to talk about, that our general orders are on the website, which we talked about. The link is there. I've mentioned what I said last week here in our work session about what happened in the town in 1974 and all the things that we've worked on, for so many years. And obviously there's always room to grow, but Herndon is very cognizant of this and very, on top of it, and wants it has continued to build a relationship with our community. And so we are all ears, but, certainly want to hear concerns that we have from the community. And the response back has been mostly really positive. I got one follow-up question from someone who did actually live in the town that I've continued to put in touch with the chief, because I think that's probably the best messenger right now, especially, I don't know if you saw her message that she put out on social media, which is,
I thought her message really was excellent.
And it's unusual. She does not do that very often.
Yeah.
So I should probably stop talking, but that's how I've been trying to handle it, so that it's a cohesive message. And when we did get one person who wrote in with a very specific concern, and I think you all got it, about her husband being stopped, the HPD has contacted her, and they left a message. I'm not sure that she's returned the call, but they are trying to work with her and get the specifics and see what happened. There should be body camera footage to verify or, dispute what they feel they experienced. But the chief is on top of all that from my seat in the theater.
Okay, that's really good to hear. And that's essentially what I wanted to know, is that we are directly following up, because like you said, there's a couple form letters and there was some very specific ones. And then there was the one from James Rollins, who talked about potentially having what I would call what we did with the roundtables, but specific to maybe a police discussion. And maybe it's something we need to do soon. Maybe it's something we do with, depending on COVID. And Lisa Yates, if you can weigh in on what can we do, or what if we wanted to schedule or start talking about that and reaching out to the community, given that we're in this continuity of operations. What is your guidance to us on that?
Well, I would simply say that I think the best conduit to figure out what can be done would be the manager, to tell you what staff is able to do, what resources are available to us, and to hear exactly what it is that, everyone wants to discuss. I don't have any legal guidance. I would at this point say that, still being in a state of emergency, still being under phase 2, I know that there are many demands on the time and resources, and we'd have to prioritize that. And I think the manager and mayor and the chief would very much like to to help, but just need to know what it is.
Okay, no, that's fair. And I think as long as the chief is directly communicating with the several of these folks, so that's one, and we'll continue to discuss that. But I feel comfortable with what we're doing, at least right now, with those questions. The second one was hopefully a slightly easier one in terms of there was one person in particular, and I know several folks have talked about the fact that services have been suspended, yard waste pickup. Mr. Ashton, I know you already addressed this in the beginning, saying stay tuned, you're going to have an update really soon. And I think maybe just in this public forum, if you can just remind folks how we communicate this. I mean, we certainly, from our lens, and I know from Ann Curtis, we're doing the best we can to get the communication and get this out in lots of different ways. But would you just, for folks listening, review kind of how we're going to continue to communicate when things get turned back on, and we will pick up yard waste and those things that I know are really important services that folks are ready to have happen again.
Very early on when this is Bill Ashton, town manager, very early on when this started to take root, we realized that things were going to change very rapidly. And so we decided to use the website as the best conduit, establish a COVID-19 webpage that would be a repository for all this information. And we would direct everybody back to that page. That's why we put the signboards out that still remain out there today to remind people to go there. Now, I'm sure people now drive by them and don't really pay attention anymore, as people want to do. But we also push out over Facebook, Twitter. We every social media channel we use. We put out press releases. I bring them up in this forum, and we push it out those ways. That was probably the best way to get the information out because it was changing so rapidly. And I suspect as we begin to reopen, you're going to see a very similar thing going the other direction. Things are going to start coming back online rapidly as well. So we can't send out mailers to every house. We can't put a sticker on every trash can because it's just things are too rapid for those communication mediums. So we have to. I encourage everybody to go to the website, check the page, see what's going on, and again, as these things come back on, I expect them they're going to come back on relatively rapidly as we push further into this. Excellent.
That's very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Who was next? Ms. Friedrichs.
This is Ms. Friedrichs. Councilmember Baker mentioned almost all the things I wanted to say, and I'm extremely supportive of, as you know, having a roundtable whenever we can to address issues that really impact citizens. And I think this should be a priority because of the times we live in and the fact that we are trying to do the best job we can. And it would be nice if people understood what efforts we've made in that direction. I also wanted to thank the town manager for the response that I got. I've been having trouble on the meetings and agendas page. It's been very strange looking for the past couple of weeks, and today it looks right. But when I want to send somebody to that page and there's nothing there, there's no agendas and no minutes and no meetings listed, it's hard to be responsive. So I really appreciate the fact that it looks perfect right now, and I hope it stays that way. I also want to thank the HPD for what they did with the two racial justice events, because I think it makes a big statement when our police go out there and show that they are part of the solution, not the problem. And it brought tears to my eyes, and I am ever so grateful, and I just want everyone to know that. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. And I will state for the record that it does appear that at 7:28, Mr. Del Aguila has rejoined us. Is there any other comments from council at this time? Madam Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and please excuse my buddy if they come back. I'd also like to comment on the, not only have we been rough times with the pandemic, but recent events in Minnesota, but I'd just like to remind people, especially the folks that wrote into this, that just may not pay attention to what's been going on in Herndon for a very long time with respect to our Herndon Police Department. My children are grown, yet they had coaches that were Herndon police. That's where my youngest son got to know some officers when he was about 8 or 10 years old. And he still speaks to them when he comes into town and they ask me about him. Also, the Coffee with a Cop. A lot of people may not know that we've been doing Coffee with a Cop for some time to get the community to come in, to be able to sit. Just the way we do our roundtables with council members, our police officers are doing this with the public. The resource officers that we have at our schools. When I served on the Children's Executive Commission for the Commonwealth of Virginia, the other municipalities were trying to figure out how they could get them. When I told them what our police were doing, our Herndon police, they were so impressed that a town was supporting our police officer being present in schools. Our chief has taken it further, and they actually get in there at the elementary schools and actually have sporting competitions between the police and the children so that we can have that the real community policing that I've been hearing, but good things about on the news, that this is what needs to happen. Once again, Herndon, we're ahead of the curve and for a number of years. Daryl Smith, back in the early 90s, working with children in after-school programs over in the Four Seasons neighborhood and other neighborhoods. So we have a lot to do. You know, if we don't know all these things, maybe have the chief let the rest of the council members know. If you haven't had children in school, you may not know about those things, but we just have a lot of awesome things. And another note, with the pandemic, Waskin, who owns a number of business buildings where Mom's, Sprouts, and Lotte are, sent out a postcard. Most of you probably got a postcard. A lot of people just throw postcards in the mail, but I went, oh my goodness, he's advertising, letting people know that these places are open. And then the places that weren't open that are personal services, there's a note saying when they're open, you get 30 days from the date they're open to get discounts. So they're really trying to up their game. And I've noticed the signs all over town where people are saying, we're open, we're open. And the owners of the buildings are trying to help their businesses. And thanks again to DPW for keeping our streets clean, you know, picking up our trash and our recycled materials. I know they've had a real hard time. I believe it was Arlington. They had too many people sick, but they didn't pick up their trash. So even though we're not getting our yard trash picked up, town manager did a great job, worked with the staff at Public Works. Sure, we weren't having all the staff coming in, so we didn't lose all the staff. Thank you again, town manager, for what you did on that. That's all.
Thank you, ma'am. Are there any other comments related to the pandemic emergency that we are dealing with right now? Anybody else? I cannot see Councilmember Del Aguila, so I am assuming he is not trying to raise his hand electronically. I'm just checking with IT. I'll just make a quick comment while we verify that. I just want to thank staff again. I know we said it last week during our work session, but since I believe we have more members of the public tuning in right now, staff really bent over backwards trying to get our restaurants up and running on day one of phase one. I think they approved upwards of 26 applications in the first day and a half that was available. So we've gotten some comments from the public, and I just want to thank you for that, because it's really, I mean, small businesses especially are the heart of Herndon, and we have really gone above and beyond. And when I say we, I mean the town manager and our economic development staff and CD really have worked and just done a lot of heavy lifting. So thank you so much on behalf of really all of us. And IT has let me know that we do not have any other council members who have electronically raised their hands. So last call for comments. All right. Thank you all very much. Once again, here we are at the Webex participation process, and we have a whole bunch of public hearings here this evening. So I will outline how that works. At the appropriate time, I will ask those wishing to address the council to click the hand icon on their Webex, and IT will acknowledge that you are ready to speak. During the comments portion, the instructions for participation will be posted on the screen. It's also posted on the agendas and minutes page of our town website. To make sure that we see everyone who wishes to speak, we will pause for a few seconds and wait for a member of the public to raise their hand electronically and give the clerk a chance to take a look for that. That does mean it's probably going to take a little bit longer because unlike when we are in the chambers, I can't glance up and quickly see if we have members who are interested. So please bear with us. Let's see. Go on through. All right. So I think that handles it. I will reiterate when we get to the actual public hearing. So I will move right along. Items 4 through 11 are streetscapes with phase 3 and the Center Eldon Street intersection projects. So I'll outline the process that several of these hearings this evening relate to one another. The first 8 relate to the use of eminent domain for the streetscapes phase 3 and the Center Eldon Street intersection projects. Staff will present the reports concurrently on these items, followed by 8 separate public hearing openings, votes, or comments and votes by the council. At the end of each public hearing, I'll ask for a motion, followed by the council discussion and the roll call vote. And I'll ask again if you'll try to unmute at the beginning so that we can move through our votes as quickly and efficiently as possible. Streetscapes phase 3 are the ordinance that would authorize the use of eminent domain for the acquisition of fee simple interest and temporary easements for public pedestrian, utility, and streetscape improvements along Eldon Street and downtown Herndon on 5 parcels of property and are as follows. Eldon Street Market LLC with the address of 771 and 765 Eldon Street, known as parcels 0076, 77, and 78. And the Alice Martin Family LLC with addresses of 762 and 761 Eldon Street, known as parcels 0025 and 0083. And proposed ordinances for the Eldon Street intersection project authorize the use of eminent domain for the acquisition of fee simple interest, permanent easements, and a temporary easement for transportation facility improvements at the Center and Eldon Street intersection on 4 parcels of property, which are owned by, and I do need to read this into the record, so bear with me, trustees of the Church of Jesus Christ with an address of 800 Eldon Street, known as parcel 0033. Richard Cook with an address of 801 Eldon Street, known as parcel 0073A, and Eldon Street Market LLC with an address of 791 Eldon Street, known as parcels 0074 and 0075. I will open the public hearings and ask the clerk, have we received comments for the record on these items?
Madam Mayor, we did not receive comments on these items.
Thank you very much. So with that, I will recognize John Irish, who's here. He's our Deputy Director of Public Works for a collective presentation on all 8 items, followed by input from our Deputy Town Attorney, Lori Sigler, who I also see is with us this evening. And before we get started, I wanted to ask for the record, just like last time, during since we're so limited in what we can work on during a pandemic emergency for continuity of government, could you just quickly let the public know why this qualifies under those circumstances? Mr. Irish, thank you.
John Irish, Deputy Director. Madam Mayor, council members, good to be here. To answer your question, the main reason that these are before you tonight under the continuity of government auspices is because these 2 projects are critical infrastructure projects for the town of Herndon, and they are tied into federal funding, highway funding, that have certain stipulations and timelines that we are under the requirement to adhere to. The streetscape portion of these projects has a advertisement date of June 24th. We know that we will not probably be advertising by that date, but we do have to have the right-of-way and easements under our control through this process we're undertaking tonight, and that will satisfy that requirement. The Center Eldon Street project is contiguous with the streetscape project, and therefore we're hoping to be able to advertise both of these projects at the same time, and that is kind of the result of why we're here with you today.
Thank you for that clarification. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. What I'm going to do tonight is basically give everyone an overview of what the projects entail that we are seeking to get these right-of-way and easements satisfied. As you mentioned, it's a combination of two different projects, Streetscape Phase 3 in the Center and Eldon Street intersection. Next slide, please. Next slide. So this is just a general idea of where these projects are. The Streetscape project is on Eldon Street between approximately the Jimmy's Old Tavern and the Center Eldon intersection, and the Center Eldon intersection project, as it's called, is at the intersection. They go together, and then you see the detail of this. Slide, please. So this is just showing an aerial view of the approximate parameters and perimeter of where the Streetscape project is. Majority of it is on the south side of Eldon Street, except for the portion in front of the old Ice House Cafe and the upholstery shop. The section that's to the north, which is the top of this area, will be completed when the downtown development is installed and completed. Next slide, please. So the improvements include finishing the overall streetscape project that's been underway for a number of years on Eldon Street. This is the third and final phase. As I mentioned, it's across the frontage of 762 Eldon Street on the north side, the Ice House, and it approximately spans from 761 at the upholstery shop down to opposite the Aslan Brewery property on the south side. The improvements include pedestrian and bicycle improvements, landscaping, historic lighting fixtures to match the acorn fixtures, and installing some remaining infrastructure for the downtown utility project. And we are trying to utilize minimize what we have here for the additional right-of-way. Next slide, please. So here is just a picture of the properties that are affected. The different colors represent red is the right-of-way taking, which is where we're actually securing that property for the town's purposes of the street improvement. Green is what's called temporary construction easement. That is just to secure for a time period of the actual construction an additional area to allow the construction activities to take place. Once the project is completed, those easements will go away and be vacated by the languages in these easements before you. So as you can see, there are not a lot of property that we're looking to do. Total of approximately 979 square feet of right-of-way take and 336 square feet of temporary easement. Next slide, please. The timeline is just a kind of reminder of where this project started. It started way back in spring of 1998. And our going forward schedule is we are taking care of the right-of-way land acquisition this spring, summer. We have completed the construction plans and they only remain to be reviewed by VDOT. We will complete the land acquisition and a very little bit of utility relocations this summer. We intend to advertise as soon as possible, which we're expecting to be late summer, early fall. As soon as we can get the bids in, we'll start construction, and the project is expected to take about 6 months start to finish, pending any unforeseen conditions. Next slide, please. Center and Eldon Street, as I mentioned, is just pretty much the intersection itself. As you can see, that'll be tied into the west end of the streetscape project. Next slide, please. And this project is similar in nature to the streetscapes. We'll be doing the improvements of sidewalks and crosswalks. It also includes realigning the intersection to have that Center Street crossing Eldon a little bit straighter, and including adding a signal at that intersection as well. We'll also be including some road drainage, pedestrian signals, and other improvements. And again, we've tried to utilize as much existing right-of-way as possible to minimize our land acquisition needs. Next slide, please. Again, this is just a picture to show you, excuse me, to show exactly what pieces of property we are affecting. The green, again, is the temporary construction easement. The red is the right-of-way take. And the reason there is such a large portion on that one parcel 75, which is that southeast corner of Center and Eldon, is because of the right turn lane from northbound Center to eastbound Eldon. That'll give us an additional turn lane there. And then the purple is a permanent utility easement that we'll be using for the improved road drain. Next slide, please. Again, the timeline, this project started quite a ways back. The start was in the spring of 2015, and we are again looking forward to a very similar time frame to the Streetscapes project, where we'll be completing land acquisition and the construction plans within the next month or so. We will be completing the utility relocation and the land acquisition. That's a follow through to the rest of the summer. And again, looking to advertise for construction in the late summer, early fall, and starting construction very shortly thereafter. Again, just a second time to reiterate, we are hoping that we can bid these two projects together to take advantage of the bidding market and also a little bit of economies of scale, as the two projects by themselves are not very large projects, and therefore we figure we'll get better bids if we put the two of them together. And that concludes my overall little presentation. If there are any questions, I'll be more than happy to try and answer.
Okay, thank you. Lisa, or I'm sorry, Lori, did you want to weigh in before questions, or did council want to ask questions just of John? I think we could go either way.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and Town Council. This is Lori Sigler, Deputy Town Attorney, and whatever the council prefers. If you want to ask John questions, and I can wait, or just go forward and.
Okay, well, why don't we go forward, because I don't see people jumping up and down with questions. So we'll go ahead and hear from you. Thank you.
Okay, so what we have here, there are 8 different staff reports on the agenda tonight. There's a total of 9 parcels between the 2 projects. 2 of the parcels, the parcel that had the right turn lane in for the intersection project, the parcel in the main on Eldon and the parcel behind it were appraised together because they were contiguous. So that's why we have 9 parcels and 8 staff reports. Between all those properties, we're only dealing with 4 different property owners. So several of the property owners own a couple different parcels. And in order for the town to consider condemnation, there's strict compliance with Virginia code sections. In order to consider condemning property for a quick take, the project must be for a public use. No more private property may be taken than is necessary to achieve the stated public purpose. We have to make a written bona fide offer and an effort to acquire the property. We call it a bona fide but ineffectual effort to purchase the property. We sent out offer letters to the property owners at the end of April. We had asked for them we had given a deadline for the offer. We have, as of tonight, been in contact with all of the property owners. Okay. So all 4 property owners we have had contact with. Mr. Cook, Richard Cook, has signed a deed. So we've reached settlement with him. He has delivered a deed to our office. I'm going to still ask that you go forward and give the authorization tonight to file a certificate. It's unlikely that we need to do that for that property, but I'm still going to ask you to at least give staff the authority to go forward as a fallback if we have to acquire title that way. We have heard from the church. They don't appear to have problems with the offer. However, with the church, you trustees have to convey title. And there could be an issue establishing who the current trustees are to do that. But we've been in touch. And the other two property owners, there's been discussions and negotiations with them. And that's one thing I also wanted to point out. With the filing of a certificate of take, we can still continue to negotiate with the property owner even after the certificate is filed. The certificate really just secures the title to the property that the town needs. So the town has to follow specific steps in order to proceed to this step. We've sent out the notification letters. And like I said, it takes council action to approve the filing of the certificates of take. We have a window between 30 and 45 days in order to do that. I think that's all that I wanted to cover. If there are any specific questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Okay, thank you both. If the council will indulge me for a second before we take questions, I wanted to double check. IT's been in touch with me about Councilmember Del Aguila, who's having some bandwidth issues, so has the camera off so that he has a clearer line of communication with us. But could Mr. Del Aguila, could we just test to make sure that you are able to speak in case you want to participate? Can we hear you?
Testing. Can you hear me?
Perfect. All right. So if you do have a question, would you electronically raise your hand, and then the IT will let me know and we'll call on you. I just don't want you to be left out.
Sure thing. Thank you.
All right. Awesome. Are there questions of council or questions of from council to our staff? Ms. Friedrichs.
Sigler, you answered a lot of my questions with your comments on who you've been in contact with and so forth. Who owns the largest piece of property that we are quick taking? Is that the parking lot or is that the church?
There's an entity called Eldon Market LLC. They're the owners of that corner, the two corner lots as part of the intersection project. And then they own a couple of the properties going down towards where the Aslan building is, along the frontage there.
Okay, thank you. And they are more or less negotiating and on board and everything's proceeding as it should.
Right. We are in negotiations with the property.
All right, thank you. That's all I had.
Thank you. Other questions of Ms. Sigler or Mr. Irish? Anybody? Okay. Thank you very much. So here we go, guys. This is a public hearing. So we will start with Ordinance 20031, the property owned by Eldon Market LLC that we just mentioned. This is a public hearing, so I will ask for those wishing to address council on this ordinance to authorize the use of eminent domain for the acquisition of a fee simple interest in a temporary easement on property owned by Eldon Market LLC for public use by condemnation for public pedestrian utility and streetscape improvements. Click on the hand icon in the Webex, as you can see on the screen, how to do so. And I will ask the clerk if there's anyone who's joined that would like to address the council on this item.
Madam Mayor, I do not see anyone raising their hand to speak.
Okay, thank you very much. So if there are no speakers, I will close the public hearing and move to council level for discussion and action. Is there a motion to approve Ordinance 20031 to authorize the use of eminent domain for the acquisition of a fee simple interest and temporary easement on the property owned by Eldon Market LLC? Madam Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is Olem. I move Ordinance 20-0-31 for approval.
This is Councilmember DeCall. I second that.
Thank you very much. Is there discussion on this motion? Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I'm going to say this one time for all of the things that are before us. This has been a long time coming. It's been 22 years. It takes a long time to plan these large public improvements. And I'm looking forward to it as a 30-year resident of Herndon. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other discussion on the motion? Okay. You know what, Mr. Dahl, I'm going to ask you if you do have a motion under these circumstances, if at the end, if you'll just say, Madam Mayor, and I'll call on you, because I don't know how clunky it might be with IT since we haven't done this before, and I don't want you to be left out. So if there's no further, yes, sir.
I can jump in and unmute. I'm just afraid to turn on the video to eat up the bandwidth. But,
Yeah, that's fine. I just want to make sure that you're able to participate if you have comments. That's all.
I'm good. Yeah, I'll send them quickly. Thank you.
All right, cool. Okay, so if there's no further discussion on this motion, and it doesn't appear that there is, I will ask the clerk to please call the roll, and everyone please unmute so that we can move through this expeditiously.
Vice Mayor Olem.
Olem, yes.
Councilmember Baker.
Baker, yes.
Councilmember Delagula.
Delagula, yes.
Councilmember DeCall.
DeCall, yes.
Councilmember Friedrichs.
Friedrichs, yes.
Councilmember McKenna.
McKenna, yes.
Mayor Merkel.
Merkel, yes, and that motion carries unanimously. The next item is Ordinance 20032, property owned by Eldon Market LLC at 771 Eldon Street. It's a public hearing once again. I'll ask if anyone is here to speak on this item, to authorize the use of eminent domain for the acquisition of a fee simple interest on the property located at 771 Eldon Street. To please electronically raise your hand, and I will ask the clerk to let me know if there's anyone who would like to speak.
Madam Mayor, I do not see anybody who wishes to speak.
Okay, thank you very much. So if there are no speakers, I will close the public hearing and move to council level for discussion and action. Is there a motion to approve Ordinance 20032 to authorize the use of eminent domain for the acquisition of a fee simple interest on the property at 771 Eldon Street? Yes, ma'am.
Madam Mayor, I move Olem. I move approval of 20-0-32.
Councilmember DeCall, I second that.
All right, motion on the floor. Is there discussion on the motion? Okay, seeing none, I will ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Olem.
Olem, yes.
Councilmember Baker.
Baker, yes.
Councilmember Delagula.
Delagula, yes.
Councilmember DeCall.
DeCall, yes.
Councilmember Friedrichs.
Friedrichs, yes.
Councilmember McKenna.
McKenna, yes.
Mayor Merkel.
Merkel, yes. That motion carries unanimously. Next up is the Ordinance 20033 for the property owned by Eldon Market LLC at 765 Eldon Street. This is a public hearing. I'll ask for anyone that would like to speak on this item for this particular piece at 765 Eldon Street. If you'd like to speak, the directions are on the screen. I'll ask the clerk if there is anyone who would like to speak.
Madam Mayor, I do not see anyone who has their hand raised.
Okay, thank you very much. So seeing no other speakers, I will close the public hearing and move to council level again for discussion and action. Is there a motion to approve Ordinance 20033 for the eminent domain for the acquisition of a fee simple interest and temporary easement on the property at 765 Eldon Street? Yes, ma'am.
Olem, Madam Mayor, I move approval of Ordinance 20-0-33.
DeCall, I second that.
Okay, discussion on the motion? Okay, seeing none, I will ask the clerk to once again please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Olem.
Yes, Olem.
Councilmember Baker.
Baker, yes.
Councilmember Delagula.
Delagula, yes.
Councilmember DeCall.
DeCall, yes.
Councilmember Friedrichs.
Friedrichs, yes.
Councilmember McKenna.
McKenna, yes.
Mayor Merkel.
Merkel, yes, and that motion carries unanimously as well. Next up is the Ordinance 20034, the property owned by the Alice Martin Family LLC at 762 Eldon Street. This is a public hearing, and for the public who's watching, I know this is getting mundane, but we do have to read it all into the record, so bear with us. I will ask those who are wishing to address the council on Ordinance 20034 to authorize the use of eminent domain for the acquisition of fee simple interest on the property owned at 762 Eldon Street for public use by condemnation for public pedestrian utility and streetscape improvements. To raise your hand electronically, and I'll ask the clerk if there's anyone who's joined our Webex to speak on this item.
Madam Mayor, I do not see anyone who wishes to speak.
Okay. Thank you. So seeing no speakers, I will close the public hearing and move to council level for discussion and action. Is there a motion to approve Ordinance 20034 regarding the property at 762 Eldon Street? Yes, ma'am.
Madam Mayor, Olem speaking. I move Ordinance 20-0-34 for approval.
Call, I second that.
Okay, is there discussion on the motion? I had a feeling maybe not. Okay, so with that, I will close the public, we've already done that. We've closed the public hearing, and I will ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Olem?
Olem, yes.
Councilmember Baker?
Baker, yes.
Councilmember Delagula?
Flagula, yes.
Councilmember DeCall?
Call, yes.
Councilmember Friedrichs?
Friedrichs, yes.
Councilmember McKenna?
McKenna, yes.
Mayor Merkel?
Merkel, yes, and that motion carries. Next up is Ordinance 20035, the property owned by the Alice Martin Family LLC at 761 Eldon Street. It's a public hearing like the others, and I will ask anyone who's wishing to address the council on the authorization for the use of eminent domain for the acquisition of the fee simple interest on the property owned at 761 Eldon Street. To please raise your hand electronically, and the clerk will recognize you if you are here to speak.
Madam Mayor, I do not see anybody who wishes to speak.
Okay, so seeing no speakers, I'll close the public hearing and move to council level once again for discussion and action. I will entertain a motion. Yes, ma'am, Madam Vice Mayor.
Madam Mayor, I move approval. This is Olem, Ordinance 20-0-35.
Call, I second that.
All right, discussion on the motion. Okay, with that, I will ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Olem?
Olem, yes.
Councilmember Baker?
Baker, yes.
Councilmember Baker? Is she?
I
heard her
I just
vote.
said, yep, sorry,
Oh,
Baker,
I'm sorry,
yes.
I got a bad connection. Okay.
That's okay.
Sorry about that. Councilmember Delagula?
Flagula, yes.
Councilmember DeCall?
Call, yes.
Councilmember Friedrichs?
Friedrichs, yes.
Councilmember McKenna?
McKenna, yes.
Mayor Merkel?
Merkel, yes, that motion carries as well. Next is Ordinance 20036, the property owned by the Alice Martin Family LLC 761 Eldon Street. Should we read it? It's a public hearing. I'll ask that those wishing to address the council on Ordinance 20036 to raise your hand electronically. The clerk will call on you to participate.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
this is Olem. This is the Christ Church Jesus.
Is it? My prep says otherwise. That's what I thought I had just said this. So let me pull up my agenda and see what's going on here. I
I
apologize.
believe it is the,
This is 20036.
it is the church. I'm going to ask Ms. Sigler if she's still there to confirm that.
No, it is. My prep has, okay. The prep has the wrong address, which is completely understandable given all of these. So let me backtrack and correct myself, unless you want Lori to jump in before I do that.
No, go ahead,
Okay.
ma'am.
So this is item number 9, which is Ordinance 20036. to authorize the use of eminent domain for the acquisition of a fee simple interest and a temporary easement on property owned by the trustees of Church of Jesus Christ at 800 Eldon Street, Herndon, Virginia, tax map, I'm not going to read that long number, but for public use by condemnation for transportation facility improvements at the Center Street and Eldon Street intersection, Herndon, Virginia. And I thank you to the Vice Mayor because I looked confused and thought I just said that, but anyway, I appreciate it. So we are discussing 800 Eldon Street. I will ask the clerk, since this is a public hearing, if there's anyone here to speak on this item.
Madam Mayor, I do not see anyone with their hand raised.
Okay, seeing none, I will close the public hearing and move to council level for discussion and action. Madam Vice Mayor.
Madam Mayor, I move ordinance 20-0-36, the Church of Jesus Christ property.
Thank you.
Yes.
Is there a second?
Baker, I'll second that.
Okay, Baker is the second. Okay, so discussion on the motion, and just to clarify, this is 20-036, 800 Eldon Street, the church property. Is there discussion on this motion, anyone? Okay, seeing none, I will ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Olem?
Oh, yes.
Councilmember Baker?
Baker, yes.
Councilmember Delagula?
Delagula, yes.
Councilmember DeCall?
Call yes.
Councilmember Friedrichs?
Friedrichs, yes.
Councilmember McKenna?
McKenna, yes.
Mayor Merkel?
Merkel, yes, that motion carries. And I see what happened. The prep got cut and pasted twice on the same thing, which I'm surprised hasn't happened earlier. So anyway, next up is item number 10, which is an ordinance 20-037, property owned by Richard Cook at 801 Eldon Street, to authorize the use of eminent domain for the acquisition of a temporary easement on property owned by Richard Cook, 801 Eldon Street, for public use and condemnation for transportation facility improvements at the Center Street and Eldon Street intersection, Herndon, Virginia. And I will ask if there's anyone who is here to speak on this item.
Madam Mayor, I do not see anyone with their hand raised.
Okay, thank you very much, Madam Town Clerk. So seeing no speakers, I will close the public hearing and move to council level for discussion and action. Vice Mayor's trying to give somebody else a chance. Madam Vice Mayor.
Yes.
Sorry.
Madam Mayor, I move approval of ordinance 20-0-37, and my picture has gone out.
Oh, I can see you.
Oh,
okay. Is there a second?
okay.
Baker, I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion made by the Vice Mayor and seconded by Ms. Baker. Is there discussion on the motion? All right, seeing none, I will ask the clerk to once again please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Olem?
Olem, yes.
Councilmember Baker?
Baker, yes.
Councilmember Delagula?
Delagula, yes.
Councilmember DeCall?
DeCall, yes.
Councilmember Friedrichs?
Friedrichs, yes.
Councilmember McKenna?
McKenna, yes.
Mayor Merkel?
Merkel, yes. That motion carries. And guys, we have made it to the final public hearing on this group of items, which is ordinance 20-038, to authorize the use of eminent domain for the acquisition of a fee simple interest, temporary easements, and a permanent easement on property owned by the Eldon Street Market LLC at 791 Eldon Street, Herndon, Virginia, for public use by condemnation for transportation facility improvements at the Center Street and Eldon Street intersection. If there's anyone here to speak on this item, by now you know the drill. Please raise your hand electronically and the clerk will recognize you to speak.
Madam Mayor, I do not see any speakers on this item.
Okay, thank you very much. So seeing no speakers, I will close the public hearing and move to council level for discussion and action. Mr. DeCall.
Madam Mayor, I move to approve ordinance 20-038.
Baker, I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion to approve made by Mr. DeCall, seconded by Ms. Baker. Is there discussion on this motion? Good. All right, well, seeing none, I will ask the clerk to once again please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Olem,
Olem, yes.
Councilmember Baker,
Baker, yes.
Councilmember Delagula,
Delagula, yes.
Councilmember DeCall,
DeCall, yes.
Councilmember Friedrichs,
Friedrichs, yes.
Councilmember McKenna,
McKenna, yes.
Mayor Merkel.
Merkel, yes, and that motion also carries. Phew, we did it. Next up is item number 12, Ordinance 20039, to consider amending the fiscal year 2020 adopted budget. I'll open the public hearing and ask the clerk whether we have received comments on the record for this item.
Madam Mayor, we did not receive any comments on this item.
All right. So then I will go ahead and recognize our department or Director of Finance, Jenny Tripoli, for the staff report. And here she comes. Hi, Ms. Tripoli. I don't think we can hear you, or at least I can't hear you. No. Tonight is the night all the things are happening on Webex. At least it's not the first night we've done this. That happened to me once too, Jenny, where I looked like I was not muted, but I still was. No. When I had the issue, I changed headphones and that fixed it. I don't know if you're using headphones. Nope. We're all having that night tonight. I don't know if the town manager, are you prepared to speak on these slides? I don't want to put you on the spot. I'm not sure.
I am digging, Madam Mayor, this is town manager. I'm digging for the notes right now. So as we were talking, so just stand by.
Do we want to take a brief recess?
No, that's
no. Okay.
I think we can continue forward. Let me just pull up the staff report from last week, and I could tap dance through this.
Okay. And Jenny, maybe Jenny needs to log out and log back in, possibly, because several of us had trouble clicking in on the link. So I don't know. Technology never can predict it.
Okay, that's the wrong one. Stand by. Budget amendments.
Jenny, you may be able to call in on your phone. I don't know if you're still here.
That's what I would do.
All right, Madam Mayor. Well, Jenny goes straightening that out. Let me just punch forward and try to deliver the staff report. I have it in front of me now.
Okay.
What we're seeing here is a budget adjustment to the current fiscal year budget that would take into account things like grant funding, insurance recoveries, and other reimbursement of town costs that we'd received towards the tail end of the fiscal year that wasn't contemplated when the budget was adopted. Some of these are related to CARES Act funding for this fiscal year, money that we have spent, and we need to go to CARES to reimburse. And so we are going to ask for you all to adopt that into the budget. These include things like an increase in $105,000 in expenditures in the police department. And these are funded by federal and state seized assets, various other federal grants and for selective enforcement. Things like the ICAC, the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force, and in the e-summons funds that we receive as part of when we write traffic tickets. There is a portion of it that would go to e-summons, which is the automated way in which we have the computers in the cars, and we could do tickets in an automated fashion. We also are asking for about $19,485 for Department of Public Works, increasing their expenditures for reimbursement received from a developer for completing a punch list of items related to a development. We are asking for a $72,000 increase in community development in personnel expenditures for the Federal Community Development Block Grant that we received from Fairfax County. This is Corey Law's position that is paid for from a Community Development Block Grant out of the county. We are also looking for $500,000 in CARES Act funding to reimburse us for various COVID-related expenditures to include purchase of PPE, sanitation products and services, and expanding our teleworking, our electronic meeting capacity that seems to be vexing us this evening, as well as other goods and services related to the emergency. We are also, the Capital Projects Fund, Public Works is looking to have an increase of $31,609 in wayfinding sign expenditures and this is, if you recall, on Van Buren Street, earlier, about 6 or 8 months ago, we had a vehicle that struck one of our Herndon, Welcome to Herndon signs and destroyed it. This is to an insurance recovery to replace that sign. The Golf Fund is asking for $1,367 increase for maintenance expenses due to an attempted break-in. This is an insurance recovery. So altogether, what you see up on your screen is all those things I just discussed with you. I'm not sure if Jenny has sound yet. Are you on?
Testing.
Yay!
All right. So now you can let the amateur step aside and let the professional truly talk about this. So I'll turn it back over to Jenny.
I just want to say, guys, this is the 10th meeting that we have run like this, and I'm really grateful that all the mishaps are happening on the 10th one and not the first or second one. So all good. Go, Jenny.
Agreed. Mr. Town Manager, I believe, covered most of it. Not most, but all of this funding that we're asking for comes from external sources. E-summons money, seized asset money, of course, portion of the CARES Act money, and insurance proceeds from these accidents. So next slide, please. This again goes through what Mr. Ashton had just talked about. The police department has several grants to include the selective enforcement grant that is passed through from the DMV, the Internet Crimes Against Children state grant that can be used to purchase equipment and pay for some overtime, and e-summons funds. Public Works, this was a developer paid us to finish their punch list for them. This happens on occasion, so we did that and were reimbursed. We also received funds for a memorial bench, which we did purchase and install. Community development, this is the CD block grant that we received through Fairfax County for the housing rehabilitation position. And again, the Emergency Cost Center, we're asking right now for $500,000 of the CARES money that has been allocated. We will come to you in July for a full discussion on CARES Act money. Next slide, please. As Bill mentioned, Capital Projects Fund, this is to replace the big lighted sign that was taken out. This was fully covered by insurance. And again, with the Golf Fund, just to make them whole on the cost to fix the lock because of an attempted break-in. Next slide, please. I think we went backwards.
Jenny, that's all I have.
I think that's it. Okay, great. So I will take any questions.
Thank you so much. Who has questions for Jenny or Bill or anybody? Signe.
I'm a little disturbed by the seized assets. What are we seizing?
So this is a law that's been on the books of the Code of Virginia since 1990. It's specifically code section, and I have it pulled up here, 19.2-386.22. It's basically assets that are used in the transport or sale of illegal drugs that are seized and can then be used by participating police departments. So it is a fairly old law. It's 30 years old at this point. The State Department of Justice controls the state portion of this fund. And so they're the ones that get the money in and they allocate it out to the localities based on their percentage. There's a federal seized asset program as well, but this one is specifically state.
And if I could just, if I can just chime in to clarify a couple points. These are after conviction. The assets are then, or once seized after the person is convicted, they are surrendered because it's proceeds or product of the crime. And then we can only use it for certain things. There's certain limited elements that we can apply that money toward. It could be used for new programs or new things that wouldn't otherwise be covered under the budget. There's some very limited restrictions on how we can move forward and use that money. And all usage of that money is not determined by the chief of police. It requires my signature for the state.
Are we seizing the assets, or I mean, is it assets seized in Herndon or?
It's
by Herndon
statewide.
Police?
Share of a statewide seized asset pool.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you for asking that. I had several questions about that too, and now I don't have to ask them. Is there anyone else who has questions for Jenny or Bill on this item? No? All right. Thank you so much. This is a public hearing, so I will ask if there's anyone here that wishes to speak on this item from the public to raise your hand electronically, and our town clerk will call on you to speak and give your comments. You'll have up to 3 minutes. State your name and address for the record.
Madam Mayor, I do not see anyone who wishes to speak.
Thank you, ma'am. So if there are no speakers, I will close the public hearing, move to council level, and I will entertain a motion for Ordinance 20039, amending the fiscal year 2020 adopted budget. Is there a motion? Ms. Friedrichs.
Madam Mayor, I move approval of 20-0-39.
Second, Olem.
Okay, discussion on the motion. Anyone? Okay, seeing none, I will ask the clerk to once again call the roll, please.
Vice Mayor Olem?
Olem, yes.
Councilmember Baker?
Baker, yes.
Councilmember Delagula?
Delagula, yes.
Councilmember DeCall?
Call yes.
Councilmember Friedrichs?
Friedrichs, yes.
Councilmember McKenna?
McKenna, yes.
Mayor Merkel?
Merkel, yes. That motion carries unanimously. That brings us to Resolution 20G 17, to consider adoption of the town manager's recommended 2022 through 26 portion of the 21 through 26 capital improvement plan. And I'll open the public hearing and ask again if we have received any comments for the record.
Madam Mayor, we have not, we did not receive comments on this item.
Okay, thank you. So we again this evening have Dana Heiberg, our senior planner, is here for the staff report. And he, like last week, there is no webcam available for him. So we will be hearing from him and seeing his PowerPoint this evening. Good evening, Dana. And it looks like Dana is still muted on my end.
Good evening, Madam Mayor. Can you hear me now?
We certainly can.
Thank you. If we can have the PowerPoint slide from my IT control center at this time. Mission control.
One small step for man. Yes.
Thank you very much. So, as you mentioned, this is the 22 through 26 portion of the CIP. You have adopted your operating budget for the FY21 portion, and I'll be presenting the town manager's recommendation. If I can have the next slide. So basics for you, the definition of purpose of our CIP, it is a financial planning document, and planning is really the key word. It's not an authorization or an expenditure type of document. It does consist of a 6-year schedule, as you know, for a variety of public facilities. Our process is that developed by the staff. It's then reviewed, and a recommendation is made by the Planning Commission to the town manager. And then the town manager then, of course, makes additional adjustments, and we have a recommendation from the manager to the town council. It does reflect and effectuate the town's goals as expressed in the council's vision for the town. As I mentioned, you adopted your FY21 operating budget, and so the first year of the CIP in effect has been adopted. And then beyond the budget year, it's really a proposed plan, and it lays out an important guide for the town, for the staff, for other entities that are involved of how we're going to fund the projects from concept through design and construction. Next slide, please. Now, obviously, the proposed CIP in our process was developed prior to the COVID-19 situation, so we have a new reality. It's an unprecedented fiscal situation, as you know. Achievement of these projects, as we've laid them out in the CIP, it's uncertain, and it will be for the foreseeable future. It's not something that's going to be resolved in a matter of weeks or probably even months. What was a calculated plan is now an aspirational document. Next slide, please. So an overview of our pre-COVID CIP plan, and I'll run through that overview at this time. Next slide. As you know, it's got a total of 48 projects, which was similar to last year's CIP. We do have 36 general government projects. They're funded by a number of sources. We also have 12 enterprise fund projects. Of course, we have our water and sewer fund, our golf course fund, our cemetery fund, and our downtown parking enterprise fund. We do have some new projects this year. New to our CIP amongst the projects that are been familiar to you because they've been included in prior CIPs that you adopted, but the new projects, I'll just mention South Eldon Street, which was an outgrowth of a community-driven plan that you adopted last year. It's a VDOT Smart Scale funded project coming along. We have Metro Rail Station Promenade, which is an outgrowth of course, the efforts towards the opening of that Metro Rail Station in Herndon and the work on the plan that we have for surrounding properties and the private development. We have number 12, a new project this year, Central Eldon Walkability. It's a grant project. It's a very sizable, significant grant project. We have Townwide Security Initiative, an important effort to address critical security issues at various town facilities. We have a number of buildings, of course, and so that over a period of years, that's going to address some of these major tasks and items that we need with respect to securing our buildings and our personnel. And then there's over at the police server, over at the police station, new for this year is a project involving the server room, the heating and air conditioning system over there, and the expansion of that server room to provide the optimal or the decent conditions for the operation of those servers. Next slide, please. So I'd like to highlight our two really large projects in transportation that they're actually VDOT administered projects, but we have them in our CIP because we do have funding that we are contributing in the mix, so to speak. The East Eldon Street project that you are familiar with, is a sizable project, over $50 million. A number of funding sources. VDOT revenue sharing is a 50% match. This is what we're pursuing to reduce the current shortfalls. And another way to put that would be we have general obligation bond funding listed within the CIP before you, so that we do fully fund our commitments, which are in the $4.4 million range for East Eldon and in the $4 million range for Herndon Parkway, Spring Street. And so, sorry, I was getting a loud tone, but I think we're okay now.
Yep, sounds good.
So, sorry about that. Again, the revenue sharing, which is the VDOT source that is competitive, but we're hopeful to be able to get that on both of these projects, and that would reduce these major general obligation bond commitments that we've laid out in the CIP. So it's something that we don't take the approach of counting on things that we don't have in hand, and so at this time we're showing it as general obligation bond funding, but we're certainly going to be continuing to pursue that revenue sharing. We have had success to some degree with a number of projects in the past, and of course everything is constantly changing in the transportation field, but we are hopeful. Next slide, please. So we have in our category of multimodal transportation enhancements about 19 projects, and I won't go through all of these, but certainly they're critical projects in a number of respects. We have major street projects. We have projects that are more of the pedestrian and bicycle facilities. We have other enhancements. And so we have quite a mix of the larger scale multimodal street projects versus some of these smaller but important other types of projects. Next slide, please. The other categories I'd like to cover quickly. We have government facilities and infrastructure. So again, attending to the various town facilities. And I won't go through all the list. I did want to mention with respect to the last item on this list, the downtown redevelopment, the Arts Center interior. Just want to highlight that it does include an approved $1.2 million grant from Fairfax County, and that is an approved grant. It's part of an MOU between the town and the county. I think the staff report had used the word anticipated, and really the correct word in this case is approved grant, and we would certainly anticipate that we'll be reimbursed per the terms of that grant. The other category highlighting here is the important stormwater management environmental enhancement effort. It is funded by the county through, they have a special small stormwater tax countywide, and so we work to attain some funding, and we're supporting storm drainage improvements and stream restoration through that source. Next slide, please. So another important category, of course, is parks and recreation, and we have a number of projects as usual. I won't go through the entire list. I believe the Brady Park tennis courts is the project that is funded completely with the reserves. It's actually coming along quite shortly later this year. We have major projects which are a little farther out in time. supported by general obligation bond funding, the Herndon Community Center, Phase 5, and the Runnymede Park Nature Center. And then we have some smaller projects such as the Trailside Skate Park and Town Hall Square. Over with the Golf Course Fund, we have the expansion Phase 3 project. It's farther out in your proposed CIP, but we do have additional study and estimates coming along. Let's see, that's in FY24, so it's a little bit near that we would take an initial look at that expansion type of project. And then we also have some master plan improvements at the golf course, but that's also pushed to the out years at this point in time. Next slide, please. With Water and Sewer Fund, I'd like to mention that we have the usual, I guess I would say, array of system improvements that you're familiar with seeing in recent years. And then the two big items that I would like to highlight are the sewer conveyance and the sewer capacity purchase. That would be the two largest projects. The sewer conveyance is all about getting the effluent to Fairfax or Loudon treatment. It involves a new force main and pumping station, so it's a very significant project. The sewer capacity purchase, of course, is treatment capacity. So that's a major purchase of treatment capacity from the region in order to be able to serve the town for the future and the expansion of treatment capacity. Under the Downtown Parking Fund and Cemetery Fund, we have the Downtown Parking Capital Contribution, which is associated with our Downtown Partnership Project with Comstock, and the fact that they'll be building a large parking structure with a portion of it dedicated to the town's legacy parking, public parking program. And then Chestnut Grove Cemetery Master Plan, we have investments that are also a little farther out in the sequence. Next slide, please. We're using the usual sources that you're familiar with seeing in past years. Of course, general fund recurring revenues. Grant funding is one of our largest funding sources. We have some proffer commitments from developer projects. Of course, we have GO bond financing. We will need to finance some of the larger investments over time and make payments. A very small source is some reallocation of some CIP dollars. From time to time, we have some small amounts when projects are closed out. We have, of course, the Golf Course Fund, which is a separate enterprise fund. Within the Water and Sewer Fund, we have the operating revenue is a very significant source. We continue to use that on a year-by-year basis, but with some of these really major capacity and other system investments, we do have to fund revenue bond funding to finance some of the major items. And then there is a Fairfax County portion contribution that helps us with some of this water and sewer, at least one of those projects. And downtown parking, DT stands for downtown parking. And again, that is a general obligation bond in addition to the bond financing I mentioned above. Next slide, please. I'd like to just, as we draw towards the end of this, mention our effort to always align the CIP with the comprehensive plan and policies. And I think we have major projects, especially that require the debt type of investments, such as East Eldon and Spring Street improvements, the downtown parking and the Arts Center, Runnymede Park Nature Center, Community Center, and Metro Rail Station area projects, certainly consistent with the adopted comprehensive plan. We have other major infrastructure CIP projects that are necessary to support redevelopment that the comprehensive plan lays out. So the plan may not specifically call out the projects, but the plan is calling for certain levels of redevelopment and that infrastructure we need to put in place to support the redevelopment that the plan calls for. And then finally, we have several projects that address the pedestrian plan that the council adopted last year. And I believe there are about 30 items within that. We have several projects within the CIP. By my count, they address 18 of the action items from the town's pedestrian plan. And then there are about 12 additional items in that pedestrian plan that are really a little more in the maintenance category. We typically don't include projects below 50,000 in the CIP, but some of these items could be addressed in that manner. Next slide, please. Okay, the future situation. Next slide, please. The outlook is that the funding amounts and the sources within the document are not assured, obviously. Funding is going to be greatly reduced. Enterprise fund monetary resources are not as exposed as our general fund revenues and some of our other sources, but you know, they may face downward pressure as well. An example of that would be, you know, if there's an empty office building sitting there, obviously it's not going to generate the water and sewer revenue that we would have anticipated. Next slide, please. So the path forward, we're going to reassess. The staff will reassess based on future revenue outlook as we go along incrementally through time. It's not going to be infrequent. It's going to have to be almost an ongoing month-by-month type of effort. The grant-funded projects will be a priority because we want to ensure that the benefit that we get from grant funding that's already allocated or received, that we ensure that we, you know, do our best to get that and make use of it and move on. So we want to provide several needed transportation projects and make sure they move forward. And we want to prepare for the arrival of Metro Rail and set the stage for that future revenue, that future tax base that comes with redevelopment. So staff will turn to council with periodic updates and recommendations is the bottom line. Next slide, please. And so the staff recommendation would recommend that you approve the resolution. It's dated June 9th, of course, and it does what we typically do in these CIP resolutions at the end of the process. It describes our process or references the Planning Commission's recommendation, but of course that was pre-COVID. And it references the town manager's adjustments that were made with the annual operating budget, and it approves and adopts. And we do have the caveat language at the tail end of the resolution there that the funding shown is dependent upon future revenue.
Okay, thank you. Are there questions for Dana on the CIP? Anyone? I will note the vice mayor is away from the dais. The dais. Okay. Okay. So I see no comments. This is a public hearing, so I'll ask if anyone's here to speak on this item to please raise your hand electronically, and the clerk will let us know if there's anyone from the public to speak.
Madam Mayor, I do not see anybody who wishes to speak.
Okay, thank you very much. So I will close the public hearing and move to council level and entertain a motion. Ms. Friedrichs.
Adopt Resolution 20-G-17.
Second, Olem.
Okay, we have a motion to approve made by Ms. Friedrichs and seconded by Ms. Olem. Is there discussion on the motion, anyone? Okay. Seeing no discussion, I will ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Olem?
Olem, yes.
Councilmember Baker?
Baker, yes.
Councilmember Delagula?
Flagler, yes.
Councilmember DeCall?
McCall, yes.
Councilmember Friedrichs?
Friedrichs, yes.
Councilmember McKenna?
McKenna, yes.
Mayor Merkel?
Merkel, yes. That motion carries unanimously, and that concludes our agenda this evening.
Madam Mayor, this is Olem. Seeing no other business, I move we adjourn.
Second.
Baker, I'll second that.
I think that was Baker that second?
Yep.
Okay. All right. So I will call the question and ask the clerk to, for the 100th time this evening, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Olem?
Olem, yes.
Councilmember Baker?
Baker, yes.
Councilmember Delagula?
Flagler, yes.
Councilmember DeCall?
McCall, yes.
Councilmember Friedrichs?
Friedrichs, yes.
Councilmember McKenna?
McKenna, yes.
And Mayor Merkel?
Merkel, yes. So that motion carries. We stand adjourned at 8:46 p.m. Good night, everybody.
Night.
Good night.
Night.
Thanks.